Picture a senior leader in a meeting. They know the answer. Not a hunch, not a guess. They've seen this exact situation play out before. They know where it leads. And then they open his or her mouth. I think we should consider moving in this direction, though there are a few variables worth weighing. And depending on how Q3 lands, we may want to revisit the assumptions underneath this. Because there's also the question of the room follows them for about 10 seconds and then it starts to drift. Not because they were wrong, because by the time they finished the sentence, the thing they actually knew was buried under everything they added to it. Welcome to Soulfire Leadership. I'm Amanda, and this is where we look at the patterns that shape how leadership actually works from the inside. Today, I want to talk about something I've watched happen to some of the sharpest leaders I've worked with. The more they know, the harder it becomes to say it simply. You see the problem, you name the solution, you move on. But experience changes something. The longer you've been inside complex environments, the more you start to see what other people don't. The edge cases, the exceptions, the 3 decisions downstream that this one will affect. And that depth is real. It's earned. It matters. But here's what's happening without anyone noticing. Your thinking stops arriving as a single point. It starts arriving as a network. So instead of this is the direction, it becomes this is the direction, but there's this consideration and this dependency and this thing we should probably account for. The insight is still there. It's just no longer the thing that lands first. Here's the mechanism underneath this. When you reach a conclusion, your mind immediately moves to expand it. It adds context, precision, nuance, everything that could make the idea more complete. And every addition feels responsible. It feels like rigor. It feels like you're doing the idea justice. But what you're actually doing is delivering the network instead of the signal. And there's a real difference between those two things. A signal lands immediately. People feel it. A network requires processing. The room has to sort through the layers to find the point. And by the time they do, if they do, the moment has passed. The insight didn't fail. It got diluted on the way out. The reason this pattern is so hard to catch is that it feels like it's thoroughness. It feels like you're being responsible, like you're honoring the complexity of the situation. And in some contexts, a written analysis, a strategic briefing, that completeness is exactly what's needed. But in a room, in real time, where someone needs to feel your certainty before they can move, completeness can work against you. And most leadership advice misses this entirely. It tells you to communicate more clearly, be more concise, get to the point. But that's a surface fix for something that happens much earlier. The distortion isn't happening in your delivery. It's happening in the half second between when you know something and when you start to build on it. Once you start noticing this, one thing becomes clear. There are two versions of your thinking. The first version, the original signal, arrives clean, one point, certain, direct. The second version, the developed version, is layered, more complete, more nuanced, more defensible. Both are valuable, but they don't serve the same purpose. The first version moves a room. The second version explains a position. And when you start to see the difference in real time, in the room, something shifts. You don't lose your depth. You don't stop being rigorous. You just learn to choose which version the moment actually needs. And when you lead with the signal, people feel it. Not because you simplified what you know, but because you let it arrive before you improved it. If you ever finished a sentence and felt like it landed lighter than it should have, it's worth asking, was the idea unclear? Or did you add so much to it that the clearest part got buried? Your most powerful insights may not be the most complete ones. They may be the ones you say before you have a chance to improve them. If this kind of pattern recognition is useful to you, subscribe to Soulfire Leadership. This is where we look at what's actually shaping your leadership before it ever becomes visible to anyone else. I'll see you in the next one.